they gonna try to blame you like they don't know that you a product of your environment, right? They gonna make it seem as if though you came into this world with your own thought process. Like you came into this world with your own programming. And they know very well that you came in and you had to be indoctrinated. You came in and you had to inherit frequency patterns. You came in and you had to try to make sense of the madness. And when you pushed back against it, they looked at you funny. They looked at you funny for standing up within yourself, for saying, nah, I'm not gonna let nobody try to put a labeling upon me. You said, nah, I'm gonna define myself before anybody gets to define me. And they had a problem with that. They had a problem with you defining yourself. But it's not like you really care, right? Because while you were under the programming, while you were under the intense programming, you carried all of that weight. You carried all of that weight. And then as you were going through your awakening process, you realized that to truly be enlightened, you had to emerge completely with the light. You started to do shadow work. You did all of that shadow work, and then you realized too that you could not stay in the shadows. You had to completely be one with the light. Now here you are with me on the Frequency in Motion channel, and we're chopping it up. Today we about to get to the bottom of it. Today we about to be talking about those silent traumas that society often sweeps under the rug and pretends as if though it doesn't shape the internal, collective, and personal psyche. You know that you had to deal with some of those traumas that society did not even get to label within yourself, in silence too. You probably didn't even have anybody around you that you could trust to talk about some of the stuff that you dealt with internally. You probably got to learn it was best to just keep it within yourself, meditate, and throw it out. Because when you get to tell people about what you're going through, they pretend. They act as if though they not dealing with stuff in their life. They turn around and tell somebody else to mock you. They turn around and gossip about you to make it seem as if their life is better. So you realize, okay, you're just gonna keep it to yourself. And that in itself is part of the collective trauma. That in itself made you feel as though, okay, well, I'm feeling this way and I don't really feel comfortable telling anybody about it. So I'm gonna just sit with it. And if they keep poking, they keep pushing, they're probably gonna get a reaction out of you that they was not expecting, right? The silent traumas that we get to deal with. They're acting as if though you came into this world with your own programming, as if you came in with your own thought process. You went through the same indoctrination that they went through. You went through the academical system. You probably had to deal with religious folks, right? You had to probably go to temple, to mosque, to church. You had the fellowship, and all of that created this internal identity. You dealt with the academical system, right? You had to deal with childhood conditioning. You had to deal with emotional wounds that did not even get to heal. You had to deal with a whole lot, and yet you're still standing. And yet you're still pushing. And you know, the funny thing is, they would never look at you and say, wow, you've really come a long way. They would never look at you and genuinely celebrate you, because within their minds, they would still like to stay stuck on that level that would get them to come around you and try to belittle you. But you've had enough of that. You've shifted. You said, despite the fact that I might have been unaware, despite the fact that I had to go through the programming, it doesn't mean that I am going to now live my entire life being subjected to frequency patterns that are suppressing my mind, body, and soul. You said no. You said no, you're going to rise above it. And you did. You did. And despite the fact that they saying whatever they saying, they watching you and they learning. Oh yeah, believe it. They learning because you've become an example. You become an example that you don't have to stay down and stay in certain patterns that were downloaded upon your mind or that you probably inherited. You don't have to stay in that just because everybody else is in it. You got to realize that you could transcend. You are a transcendental being. You've transcended all of that. They can't look at you eye to eye anymore. They have to look up to you, and that's what's killing them. But you don't really even care about that because you did what you had to do first for you. You were feeling the pain within yourself. You remember those days when you had to bite your tongue, when you had to be quiet just to get along in spaces that were not so comfortable. You remembered all of that, and you said, nah. You want to be comfortable as you are living on this planet. You want to feel wholesome within your body. So you said you're not going to bite your tongue anymore. You said you're not going to put up with foolishness anymore. You said you were not going to allow what your parents inherited to be what would define your present and your future. You said all that madness, all that childishness, all that emotional trauma that they had bundled up in them, that they never really sat with themselves to assess and break down, that they poured upon you, yelled at you when you did not even understand your own thoughts. You go to school and the teacher's mad at you because you don't understand certain processes. All of that they poured upon you, you said, nah, it's not going to take room in your mind. Now they're looking at you like the beacon of light that you are. You have successfully transcended the societal conditioning. Subtle, evident, it is there. And there's still a lot of people that are caught up in it. Today, I wanted to come be out in nature so I could really just connect with y'all. I'm proud of you because it is not easy. It is not easy to separate yourself from the noise. It is not easy for you to say, look, I know that I grew up with y'all, but I'm sorry. I'm not going to keep kicking it with y'all because I see that y'all are not willing to do the work necessary to grow up. I see that y'all have just decided to be comfortable with that thought process, thinking negative, but you said, nah, you shifting, and you shifted. You might be alone right now, but guess what? You got your peace of mind, right? You're at peace. Congratulations. You've graduated up out of the garbage. Maintain your peace. Because even though they normalized all of that nonsense and you had to deal with the pain, but you never identified yourself with the pain. You never identified yourself with whatever the conditioning was. You knew deep within yourself that that wasn't you. You transcended it. Now look at you. When you decide to have children, that's if you don't have children, you're going to be a great example And if you do have children, I'm sure that you are that great example. You are now breaking generational curses, right? You are saying that all of the frequency patterns that were projected at you, trying to condition you to be a slave in your mind, telling you to be humble when you're supposed to be speaking up, telling you to sit down when you're supposed to be standing up for your rights. You said, nah, all of that ends with you. You said all of that ends with you. You're not playing with them. You realize that you had to learn your own lessons while respecting the fact that everybody else is going to learn at their own pace. But it doesn't mean that you're going to sit around and tolerate their ignorance, especially if it is affecting you negatively. You said no. You said nah. And I'm proud of you for that. We need more people in the world to genuinely be honest with themselves and do the work. Because it is much more better to help somebody that is struggling, trying to better themselves, than trying to push people to better themselves that don't even have the desire to better themselves. You know that. You know that. The list of silent traumas that we face individually and collectively, I mean, the list is long. I didn't really want to get too deep on it, but I wanted to talk about the childhood conditioning, the emotional wounds that we have not healed from. They want to blame you, but yet you were programmed, and the program isn't perfect. The program is very, very much flawed, and you project the flaws of the program, and then that's when they get you locked up. So many young kids are locked up today. Not to say that they did right, but because they themselves don't really understand what's going on within their own minds. The Bible was close to explaining this. The Bible said we're not wrestling flesh and blood, but we're wrestling principalities and powers in high places. And I got to figure the high places we're talking about is in the mind, regions within the mind that we were not trained on how to access, so we could be able to get to the root within ourselves, pull it out, and toss it out. The principalities within our minds, those principles that were installed within our minds, those archetypes. But you know that. That's why you sit with yourself in the quiet. You listen to your own thoughts. You separate yourself from your thoughts. You say, no, I am not that thought. I know my mama said I wasn't going to make it. I know my daddy said I wasn't going to make it. I know my friends said I was nobody. But I'm saying I'm a child of the Most High. I claim my divine inheritance. And that alone sets you up for success. Continue to soar, my dear listener, wherever it is that you're listening from. I'm sending you love. Thank you. Let's go ahead and cut it at that. Let's go ahead and cut it at that. Remember, you are not your trauma. You are not the condition. You are not the circumstance. It wasn't permanent, and you are proof of that. Until next time, keep that frequency sharp. Stay in divine alignment. You got it. You got it.